Hi, this is Pam from Flint Hill Farm, and today I'm going to show you a quick demonstration on how to felt with natural sheep's wool. I have some sheep's wool here that has been washed and carded, but that's as far as the process has gone. The rest of my supplies I'll need today are a towel, a pair of scissors, soap, I have dish soap and hand soap, needle, and I have linen yarn, a bowl of hot water, as hot as I can stand to put my hands into, a bowl of warm water, and a bowl of cool water. The first thing I'm going to do is, into my bowl of hot water, I'm going to add a few drops of liquid dish soap. The reason I'm using soap is because you want to change the pH of the wool, and the soap helps to take out any oils that are left over and helps with the felting process. I have this large sheet of batting, and I just took a small section and I pulled it off, I separated out, and then gently tugged to pull it apart. And I want to separate the pieces so that I have a lot of airspace in between. And then I'm going to start folding and rolling. So I'm going to fold this piece I have into thirds. And I'm going to start rolling the ends in. What I'm making is a bead. The result will be a wool bead that you can use for a lot of different purposes. Basically, I'm making beads for a necklace. When you are felting wool, you can count on your wool shrinking by 30%. So keep that in mind when you are deciding what size bead you want to use at the end. I'm being careful to tuck the sides in as well, so that I will end up with a nice round bead. Right. Looks like a little cocoon almost. It's not real hard. I don't have it wrapped real tight, but it's tucked in enough so that I don't have any really loose ends. And I'm going to take this ball of yarn and I'm going to submerge it in the hot water. And as I have it in the water, you can see bubbles coming out. I can give it a little bit of a squeeze. I want to keep it in the water until all the bubbles stop coming out. Now I have a pretty just wet mass of wool. I'm going to take some of the hand soap and I'm just going to gently pat it all around the outside. I don't want to use too much because I want to be able to get some friction on the wool, and if there's too much soap it ends up just slipping around in your hands. Okay, now I have a saturated ball of yarn that has soap on it, and I'm just going to start rolling it gently in my hand. I don't want to press down, I just want to roll gently, so that what I'm doing is I'm starting to get all those little fibers to stick to one another. They have little, almost like little hairs or little barbs, and they start to stick together and tuck amongst themselves to make a tight little knit surface almost. Now I'm not pressing very hard, I'm not using pressure, I'm just gently rolling. And you can see that I already am starting to have a somewhat uniform sized ball. So I'm going to keep going. Every once in a while I'll dip this back into the hot water. The hot water also helps the fibers to shrink. When I dip it in the water, I'll add a little bit more soap on the surface, and then I'll keep rolling. I have already done this wearing like heavy rubber dish gloves or cleaning gloves that have somewhat of a textured surface, and that sometimes makes the process go a little faster because you are adding a little bit more texture to your motion as you're creating the friction in your hands. You can see it's starting to form a nicer shape. It's getting tighter. Now I'll start to, as I'm working, I'm just going to start applying a little bit of pressure so that I start to compress those fibers. If your hands get tired, you can always use a surface. You can stretch out a towel and roll the ball of wool on top of the towel to create some more friction. You want to be careful not to press down too hard, or what you're going to end up with is a flattened bead or a football-shaped bead, but certainly if that's your intention, that's okay. You can see all the nice little hairs that were sticking out before. They're no longer there. So now I'm going to start working faster and applying a little bit more pressure. You can see there's a lot of soap suds coming out of it now. So I'm going to dunk in again, get a little bit of that off. I have enough soap on here now that I don't really need to keep adding any more, because I've already altered the pH of the wool enough so that it will start sticking together. One more dunk. Now I'm applying a fair amount of pressure. I'm not pressing down hard, but I can definitely feel that I am pressing against the surface of the wool, and I can feel that the ball of wool is starting to felt. It is starting to come together as a more solid piece. You can see it's significantly smaller already. I'll keep going. Okay, I think this is about the size where I want it. It's a nice solid piece now. So I'm going to change from my hot water to my warm water, and I'm finished with the soap, so I can set those aside. And I'm just going to rinse and gently squeeze it in my hands, so I'm getting that soap out of the wool. You can sit to do this, but I often find that the water winds up running down your arm. The noise is typical for a farm. The dogs are barking, the trucks are out working. There's no rest around here, so. Alright, I have pretty much of the soap out. Now I'm going to switch to the last bowl, which has cool water in it. And I've also put in this bowl a splash of white vinegar. What the white vinegar does to the water is helps to bring it neutralizes the soap that was in the wool, and it will help to return the natural pH to the ball of wool. So now I'm just rinsing, a final rinse in cold water, almost like when you're doing laundry, final rinse. Making sure that all the soap is out. And now I'm going to lay out my towel. You can see I have my bead. And I'm going to put it in my towel, and I'm going to roll it up. And I'm going to give it a good roll. It's okay if it becomes a little misshapen, because it's still wet, and we'll be able to reshape it back into the round ball or whichever shape you want. You can see it kind of came out football shaped now, but now all I have to do is I can press it back into shape, roll it in my hands. It won't felt anymore, it won't become any more compact or solid, but I can shape it back to its original size. So this piece of wool is now what we call fulled. It has been felted and it is now fulled. The truck's going to come by again, so I'll show you some of the beads I made yesterday. You can see that they're different sizes. This is a larger one, and you can see I left the natural come-alongs, if you want to say, in the wool. There are little pieces of straw and hay, little debris that was left in the wool, some little different colorations in the wool, some little pieces of curly wool. I left those in. I think it adds a nice natural texture to it. And here's one that was a bit smaller. The scissors are for trimming off any odd pieces that might be sticking out that you might not want. And it's okay to do that. Nothing will fall apart because you've compacted that wool tightly. The wet ball of yarn of wool is what you will set aside to dry, and it's going to depend on the environment in which you're drying it. You can set it on a windowsill. If you have a stove, you can put it in a container near the stove, but it might take 1 to 2 days until it's good and dry. And then once they're dry, depending on your final craft, you can use it in whatever way you want. I'm choosing to make a bead necklace out of this, so I have a large needle that I use for knitting, and I have some linen yarn on it, and I'm just going to punch through this bead and string it right onto the linen yarn, and then I would keep going with any number of beads that I want to put on my yarn. Now I chose to use undyed natural sheep's wool. You can certainly use any colors you want. This is directly from the farm, from our Romney sheep. You can also buy batting or roving from different yarn shops, or a lot of farms who raise sheep might offer items also. I hope you enjoyed learning about how to felt with natural sheep's wool, and I hope you try it